Okay, that's right. I hope you remember the last item of last lecture, last lecture in the last week. I try to describe this, which is the strategy of this course. We try to describe how unfolded the economic system, first from Europe, and how globalized according to European standard. But for understanding this procedure, this process, necessary to understand the basic item, the basic terms of European economic history. Therefore, on the first 20% of my lecture, I try to define the basic terms, the meaning of the basic term, because in rational cognition, it's a crucial understanding the meaning of the basic terms. In the last lecture, I tried to define the concept of space and the concept of time. Recently, looking the meaning of world economic system. How unfolded the world economic system, the concept of world economic system, how try to understand the process of proliferation of European economic connection and economic network, whole of the world. Look at the concept. If somebody would like to eat, drink, it's free. As I mentioned in the last lecture, separation, division of the physical and the intellectual joy is not good option. Good, cheers. So, if we try to understand a function of history, this is the collective memory of humankind. It's very high value. Why? Because we can increase the size of memory, size of experiences with the generation memory who lived in the antiquity, who lived in the Middle Ages, and who lived in the, for example, modern time. Not by chance, the politicians fight for the memories and try to form and reform time by time the meaning, the experiences former generation, our antecedents. But therefore, very high responsibility of historian to describe the best value, the best quality of the memories, of the meaning of the memories, structure of the memories. Therefore, each generation in the historical past had, this was the last slide, but repeat because connect much closely to the following item. Each generation had a great question. On the time of national formation of the national state in the 19th century, the great question was how unfolded the nations. Nations, it's a new construction, appeared only after the French Revolution based to the common language and the common culture. Before that, the real state based to the logic of empire. Empire. For example, there is a Mongolian student. Mongolian student. Very interesting. You can discuss about only after the lecture. That, for example, the great empire, great Mongolian empire, which was the largest continental empire, whole of the human history, wasn't empire of Mongolians. This was the empire of dynasty of Genghis Khan. Therefore, empire based to the logic of dynasty, not the nation, not the language. Therefore, when appeared the national state, try to describe the meaning of nation, national states, and appeared a political history, the great man, military history, the great generals, and the legal history. Why? Because necessary construct somehow the system of organization and regulation of modern society. The next milestone, appearance of economic history, when realized at the beginning of 20th century, then a global economy integrated whole of the world. But the story started much before, but at the beginning of 20th century started to the direction of global economy that became a integrated unit. And the next one, in the 30s, appeared the mass society, increased the population. The human population, you remember, reached the 1 million, according to British English, according to American billion, at the beginning of 19th century, around 80-20. And recently, it's approximately 80 million. But the first million reached at the beginning, on the time of French Revolution, on the time of Industrial Revolution. Therefore, appeared the mass society, increased the size of cities, increased the number of inhabitants of countries. Therefore, appeared the social history, which tried to describe interaction between the member of society and how increased the urban society, and so on and so. After the Second World War was a crucial question that which is the motivation of human, and appear in consequence in consequence of the influence of psychology, a history of mentality, how thinking the human about the world. It's possible, in the last occasion I mentioned that which was the focus in the traditional time. After the death, everybody would like to go to the heaven, sorry, it's quite late. Heaven. In the Muslim world, in the Christian world, in India, in China, in everywhere, heaven. The focus of the light was after the death. Recently, on the time of consummation, frame from 18 to 40, 45, 46. In this life, not after the death. Therefore, the mentality, the value system, the thinking about the good or bad, basically different, depend on the value system of contemporary. And the last great question, this was the last item in the last lecture, appeared the ecological environmental history, which focuses two crucial elements. The first one, that the physical environment changed in the historical past. The climate changed, the landscape changed, the vegetation changed, everything changed, which determined the physical framework of human history. First. Secondly, as I mentioned, I am not sure you thought about that, I ask you, I don't want to accuse you that you are animal, but I am sure I am an animal. Not only bearer of culture, but animal. You can feel the nature of animal when you are hungry, for example. But there are a lot of other needs which memorize you that we are animal. Okay, so the first generation who tried to describe the formation of global economy was a French student here. French, right? Okay, good. Very great advantage because you came from the French education system. I stayed not so long, but a little bit less than 1 year in Paris in the 90s. But very interesting, for example, the education system. A French education system, to my memories, until the end of secondary school, integrate the history and geography. Not separated. It's good? Yes. Yeah, okay. It's very important, verifying. My knowledge is. And very important that in the in the French education, it's very close, history and geography, one to other. In the university level, it's divided as everywhere on the world. But the first generation of French history, and this was the first great revolution for the old style national historian, first generation founded in Strasbourg. Probably you know, which is the location of Strasbourg. Which province? Somebody know? Alsace-Lorraine region. Somebody know when organized the first war between Germany and France for Alsace-Lorraine? The first.
Germanification?
No. 1,000 years before. The first war happened when divided the great empire of Charlemagne, 840. Therefore, between Germany and France, this is the very old apple of conflict. But, very interesting, the population is a mixed. I remember on that time, after the First World War, 2/3 German and 1/3 French. Recently, it probably changed this proportion. But very interesting, no French university, and founded a new university after the occupation, and nobody worked in the empty university. Probably you know the university and the academic life. Academic life, this is the world which directed of old people. If somebody started like you on the university career, no salary, no influence, no budget, nothing. And you step up on the ladder of the academy, increase a little bit. No luxury, but improve the situation. But when founded, and it's very difficult to, for example, earn a university position. For example, at the beginning of my career, I lived in Western Europe with different fellowship for 1 year, 2 year, half year. It's very, very dangerous and very unstable. Okay, but founded a new university, and everybody from France, no job, it's run 2-3 positions. And people who were out of French academic life. Why so interesting? Because these people, very open, no step up on the ladder, but very open for innovation. And the first generation of French historical revolution was Lucien Febvre and Marc Bloch. Recently, a University of Strasbourg named after Marc Bloch, and introduced unbelievable innovations. The first innovation was that the physical environment, this was the first idea, very important for the human history. The second one, histoire totale. Histoire totale. Why so important? Because for history, a subject everything. Not only the deeds of great men, the great general, the legal system, no, everything. For example, cleaning the north, because it's a real problem. Something happened inside of the north. In the European culture, it's took under taboo, it's prohibited in open place. But for example, other culture, it's free. But spitting, similarly, it's a subject of historical research. For example, in traditional Asian custom, there is a spitting bowl. In Europe, taking a handkerchief and finding a dark corner. Therefore, everything is a subject of historical research. Not only the great deeds, not only the military campaign, everything which did by human. And the last one, a long time, a long duration. You remember about the time concept. Some event, some construction, for example, Roman Catholic Church, unfolded for 2,000 years. This is the time span of evolution of time. We are not able to understand from the perspective of human generation and the human scale of the life. Therefore, it was the first great milestone into the direction of the economic system. The second one, the second generation, who named Ferdinand Brodel, who tried to describe European economic integration. European economic integration until the beginning of formation of medieval Europe focused to the Mediterranean Sea. And Ferdinand Brodel, who was one of the best, or according to majority of global historians, the best European historian, who was a French, is exceptional. because in the 20th century, majority of scholars in the history came from the Anglo-Saxon world, England or United States, and described la Méditerranée, le monde méditerranéen à l'époque de Philippe II. In the early modern time, how integrated, how unfolded the economic integration in the Mediterranean world. And the third generation, Emmanuel Leroy-Ladurie, I met personally, unfortunately he died 2 years ago, who followed this regional history of that. Okay, the first milestone of forming of world economic system took by American economist, Immanuel Wallerstein. Immanuel Wallerstein graduated at the New York University, and after the graduation didn't receive job. It may happen, it's not a problem, it's a challenge, And he participated a lot of aid program in Africa, and spent a lot of years in Africa without any success. Therefore, a creative person tried to understand why failed each program of them, and finally understood that a global economic system, which appeared and started to unfold even in the late Middle Ages, took bad position of African countries. For example, agrarian or mining monoculture, no chance for recovery, economic recovery. Therefore, turn to the direction of historical past. When started the story? When started the integration, forming of global integration? This is the first. And published in 1974, a famous and very seminal book of him, Modern World System. This is the starting point of formation of world economic system. The second one, 2 years after, published Robert Brenner, Agrarian Roots of European Capitalism. Why so important? Because a lot of time, even until the 70s, majority of historians describe the feudal world and the capitalism as antagonism. It's no connection one to other. And Brenner was the first who described it's not true. The capitalism appeared even in the medieval European agrarian system. The next one, 1 year later, it was a very dense decade. Peter Kreeft, Hans Medic, and Jürgen Schumbaum proposed a fully developed theory of proto-industrialism. Somebody know what means the proto-industrialism? Nobody? 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 This is a unique, no more economic history course? No? Very high, my responsibility. Okay, sorry? Proto-industrialism?
Yeah, it's like a tree.
Yeah, but how? How functional? Yeah, but it is a peculiarity, because there is some trick. Okay, the trick of European proto-industrialism. Later I will speak about. If you, for example, you read a fairy tale about the working of, for example, European or Arabians or Chinese peasant, which is the peculiarity? Working continuously. It's not true. It's not true. Even in Europe. In China it's possible. Work much more. But in Europe, half of the year is a free time. Free time. Look at somebody has agrarian experiences. I was born in an Eastern European peasant family. I'm well trained. No, any other. Okay, but you know, you start from the basis. You know that the basic cereal of European culture is a wheat, you know, wheat. And which period necessary to work for the wheat production? October, tillage, and sowing. and July for harvest. Between this crucial period, nobody worked on the field. Look at, for example, winter time, summertime. You, for example, travel for train. Look at who's staying on the wheat field. Nobody. Rabbits, for example, some wild animals, some dogs. Nobody. A lot of free time. And the proto-industrialism used a lot of free time of European peasant. Because the trader tried to, for example, increase the production, for example, the shoes. It's not possible in the cities. Why? Because in the cities had a guild. You know everybody which a guild. Guild is a specialized community of artisans lived in the city. It's limited everything, number of master, number of production, number of produced shoes, for example. But on the rural area, no limitation. Therefore, if there is some recovery from the needs for the shoes, the trader traveled to the rural area and discussed with the peasant who there is some skills for the shoe production. Therefore, a lot of peasants had industrial experiences. And when started the Industrial Revolution, the first generation who moved from village to city had some basic industrial experiences. Therefore, started so high speed a European Industrial Revolution. This is the proto-industrialism, which unfolded in rural area. A lot of peasants gained industrial experiences. So, and finally, Fernand Brodel, who was a professional historian, reconstructed the theory which made by economists, sociologists, no professional historian, and described and constructed the theory of world economic system. Therefore, the starting creator was Immanuel Wallerstein, and the people who made the real well-based historical theory was Fernand Brodel. Okay, this is the crucial volumes of Immanuel Wallerstein. The first one about the formation of world economic system, the second one about the early modern time, and finally the time of Industrial Revolution. Okay, look at, because we are speaking about different scholars, but very useful to see personally his communication. Look at some words about Immanuel Wallerstein.
I think what you described is my search for the appropriate unit of analysis. And what I came to feel some 30 years ago is that all of modern social science, the last 150 years, has had explicitly, or at least implicitly, a unit which was in fact the state. And so we assume that social action occurred within the framework of the state. States had political structures, states had economies, states had cultures, states had unities of various kinds, and each state was in some sense independent logically of every other state. They were following parallel paths. And I came to feel that that didn't make sense, fundamentally didn't make sense, that is not where social action occurred. It occurred within the framework of larger historical systems, which are called world systems. And then, yes, I thought the modern world system was a break, a significant break from previous kinds of world systems, and that it took the form of a capitalist world economy, and that therefore to understand the modern world and how it operated, one had to see it as a developing historical process of the creation of, a functioning of, and expansion of a capitalist world economy, which initially, I have to say, the word world was not being the entire globe means a large unit. But in fact, one of the characteristics of the capitalist world economy is that over several centuries it expanded to incorporate the entire globe by the 19th century. So I shifted my emphasis to a different unit of analysis, which was that of the world system, and concentrated my concerns on the modern world system, which is, as I said, is a capitalist world economy. And it's true that then turned me to necessarily some basic epistemological questions. I didn't realize that at first, initially, but I realized that when I started getting criticized for not conforming to various epistemological norms that I then realized were widespread and oppressive, if you will, but in any case I thought incorrect. So it is true that I had to turn my attention then to the questions of what is discipline, what are the boundaries of discipline, what's the logic of the discipline, and then what I now talk of as what are the structures of knowledge that we have constructed to frame the ways in which we think and the ways in which we teach others to think, which is the university system, and whether they're adequate, which I don't think they're adequate, and I don't think they're correct, and I do think they're breaking down, but that's another story.
Okay, it's very interesting. Very interesting position if somebody working interdisciplinary field, because it's very high the chance for innovation. I know well, but very bad the chance for offer somebody a job. I am partly geographer, partly historian, and when I graduated, I would like to ask a job somewhere. And my colleagues in historical department thought about me, I'm a geographer. On the geographical department thought that I'm a historian. It's very interesting position, not so easy to find a job if somebody there is between different disciplines. Okay. Fernand Braudel published a book series about this problem. It's a French version, Les Structures Quotidiennes. It's mean structure everyday life. It's a structure everyday life mean the elementary for survival of human: eat, drink, and recover somehow. And describe the elementary level of survival of human. Le jeu de l'échange, the wheel of commerce, the trade. If the one economy able to produce a surplus, start the trade in different actors. And Temps du Monde, the perspective of the world, the global integration. If somebody interested for this book on the internet, you can find. Okay, some word from Fernand Braudel. It's one of the best or the best historian of global history of the 20th century, and very interesting the story of Fernand Braudel. Some of my colleagues, my professors, told to me that Fernand Braudel invented the living library, invited historians from different countries, and for him had a great round table, and one historian sit down one side of the round table from France, other one from Poland, Hungary, India, China, and everything, and discussed about the problem. And finally wrote the chapter about, for example, some integration, and invited. This is the living library was. Okay, look at this famous scholar for some minutes on.
Et vous les comparez aux trois étages d'une maison.
The voice not so good.
Les volumes, c'est le rez-de-chaussée. Alors c'est la consommation.
Oui, si vous voulez. C'est plus compliqué que ça.
Oui, bien sûr, mais
C'est plus compliqué. C'est plus compliqué parce qu'il faut partir du capitalisme pour comprendre la démarche qui a été la mienne. Dans le premier volume, le mot de capitalisme n'est pas prononcé deux fois. S'il est prononcé une fois ou deux fois, ça m'aura échappé.
mais vous m'en parlez par la suite.
Oui, je m'en parle par la suite, mais parce qu'au rez-de-chaussée, dans cette vie quotidienne, cette vie ordinaire, cette vie de routine, le capitalisme joue aucun rôle. Alors j'ai cherché dans le premier volume, qui s'appelle Les structures du quotidien, j'ai cherché à ne pas parler du capitalisme. Le premier volume où le capitalisme n'existe pas.
Vous parlez des gens, vous parlez des...
Oui, je parle des gens, je parle des répétitions, je parle des habitudes, je parle de...
Ah, vous parlez des boissons, des nourritures, des
Des
logements, d'habillement.
Mais oui, je parle de très concret, je parle même des techniques, je parle des villes, je parle de la monnaie, je parle de tout ce qui se répète en quelque sorte et qui échappe, je dirais, à toute initiative. Le capitalisme n'en est pas responsable. Tandis que dans le second volume,
les jeux d'échange.
eh bien, les jeux de l'échange, c'est à la verticale. J'essaie d'aller au-dessus de la vie ordinaire et j'aborde l'économie de marché. C'est-à-dire les marchés, les boutiques, les colporteurs, les foires, les bourses, les banques, les études de notaire, tout ce qui est l'économie de marché. Et pour les Allemands, c'est un mot qui m'est resté toujours dans la mémoire, c'est la transparence. C'est-à-dire que quand vous allez sur le marché, quand vous entrez dans une boutique, vous êtes en face d'une situation qui n'est pas une situation tellement compliquée, vous la comprenez. Quitte à vous tromper, vous la comprenez. Tandis qu'au-dessus de l'économie de marché, quand vous arrivez auprès des grands marchands, auprès des banquiers, auprès ceux que j'appelle les capitalistes d'un autre mot, à ce moment-là, vous avez un jeu sophistiqué. S'il y a l'étiquette de capitalisme, je vais les placer tout d'abord en haut, au-dessus de l'économie de marché. C'est un superlatif.
Donc c'est le troisième volume.
Non, justement, c'est pas le troisième volume, ça c'est le second. Et le troisième volume, au lieu d'examiner les choses à la verticale, je les examine à l'horizontale. Enfin, une économie a toujours une région centrale, un pôle, une sorte de centre vivifiant avec des conséquences pour les régions voisines. Et cette zone centrale, c'est une zone où le capitalisme existe. Il existe seulement dans la zone centrale. Au XVIIe siècle, il existe à Amsterdam, il existe peut-être dans certaines régions de la France, il existe en Angleterre, il existe peut-être en Hambourg, mais il n'existe pas ailleurs, du moins de cette façon aussi nette, à mon avis. Ces ensembles économiques, c'est ce qu'on appelle aujourd'hui un mot qui a été hérité de l'allemand de Weltwirtschaft, c'est ce qu'on appelle l'économie monde. Non pas l'économie mondiale, l'économie du monde en entier, mais l'économie d'une zone, d'un morceau de la planète. On dira par exemple, la Méditerranée est une économie monde. Das Mittelmeer ist eine Weltwirtschaft, c'est une expression allemande. Alors le mot Weltwirtschaft avec ce sens un peu...
Translation is not perfect,
à la fois en allemand l'économie mondiale et l'économie monde. Alors l'Europe est une économie monde. Alors au cœur de l'économie monde, vous avez une sorte de chaleur supplémentaire. Dans les régions voisines, c'est déjà très différent, et dans les régions marginales ou périphériques, ça n'existe plus. Alors vous avez peut-être les moyens de production, on dit la production capitaliste au centre, au cœur, mais vous ne les avez pas dans les régions qui entourent cette région centrale, et vous ne les avez certainement pas dans la périphérie.
Et ce troisième volume s'appelle Le Temps du monde.
Okay, so look at how define the world economy by Fernand Rodel. Because very important to understand some construction, historical construction, a definition, which is the crucial, which were the boundary, and so and so. The first concept of, as you remember from the speech of Fernand Rodel, of world economy. Economy mondiale, world economy. Economy mondiale, this is the frame category contain each economic integration whole of the world. The second one, world-economy. Economy monde. Economy monde. Economy monde is an integrated economy, like Europe, like China, like, for example, Amerindian culture in Central America, and, for example, in Muslim world, integrated economic unit, world economy. And our story starts in the middle of the 12th century, in the High Middle Ages. And if we are looking the story in the High Middle Ages, economic history, and the rank list according to level of development, is the winner, China. Winner is China. Most developed area, civilization is China. Second one, India. I mentioned in the first lecture that the most developed region is Bengalia, Bangladesh, recent Bangladesh. The third one is a Muslim world, the Muslim world, more developed than the European countries, and only the fourth are Western and Central Europe. But the concept of Europe wasn't the same like recently. We are thinking about the geographical category of Europe, but later I will return to this problem. And Amerindian culture, it's mean the Maya, Aztec and the Inca culture, but they lived in Copper Age, before the wasn't able to melt it of the making of iron. And Russia is very interesting category that Ferdinand Brodel took a special category, Russia, in the 12th century. This was the Kiev Principality, you remember the story. And very interesting, why? Because on the time Russia was and located between European and the Christendom as the contemporary's name, and the Muslim and the Chinese civilization. And no final decision in the time that moved in which direction, to the direction of China or Muslim world or European civilization. Russia, exceptional. There is a famous mention, the Russian student in the audience? Last year was. And was a very famous mention, author wrote about Russia in the 19th century, that Russia not possible to understand. Only may feel what to be Russians. Okay, but it's other story. I visited sometimes in Russia because when I was a student at the second university, the brother who was very close to the Odessa University, and a lot of times I visited in Crimean Peninsula and the area when recently organized a war between Russia and Ukraine. Okay, Russia is the sixth, but very important to mention the most important actor of our story, Western and Central Europe, not so good position. In the high Middle Ages, international comparison. Okay, look at the second question, how we can define the economic integration, economic-word. The first element of economic integration, one area that can be clearly defined, the boundary. Which are the boundary, outer boundary of the economic integration. Some situation is easy. For example, there is a physical obstacle. Look at, for example, between China and Russia, there is a great desert, a Gobi Desert. It's physical barrier. Only one caravan by year go through the desert. Year by year, it is a physical obstacle. But some other economic definition of the barrier, of the boundary, which made by Immanuel Wallerstein, the boundary of economic integration, we can define where, in geographical location, where the expense of trade higher than the benefit. This is the economic boundary. Okay, the second one, directed by one central city. If we are looking the trajectory of evolution of European economy, the first leading city which directed whole of European economy and which integrated to European world economy was Venice, northern part of Adriatic Sea. The second one, Antwerp, located in the recent Belgium. In the contemporaries defined low country, it's a plain area. Belgium, low country is a Belgium, the Netherlands and Luxembourg. This is the low country. And Genoa, on the northern part of recent Italy, Amsterdam, recent capital of the Netherlands, and the last leading city was London. And after the First World War, Europe lost the leading position, and the leading city position moved and slowed to New York. Therefore, European story closed with the leading position of London. And according to definition of Fernand Braudel, in normal situation, stable situation, there is only one leading city. Not 2, 3, 4, only one. And this definition have to understand for us why so difficult our economic forecast and perspective recently. Because if we try to describe, according to criteria of Fernand Braudel, the recent world economy, there are at least 3 leading areas. East Coast around New York, European Union, and China. Eastern Asia, former time much more to Japan, and slow to the direction of southern China, around Shanghai, recently. Therefore, if there are, and there were 3 or 4 or more poles leading area, this is the reliable criteria of unstable period. Therefore, we are living, according to definition of Braudel, unstable period. Not by chance, President Trump tried to taking effort moving back to East Coast of United States. Okay, directed only one central city, one leading city. And the last and the most interesting peculiarity of the Fernand Braudel definition, there are different areas, economically hierarchical area we can define on the frame of world economy. There is core area, central area, peripheral area, and semi-peripheral area. Core area and the peripheral area, very easy to define. The core area most developed, and the peripheral area, the less developed area. But how we can define the semi-peripheral area? Look at, for example, the French history. On the French history, age of Louis XIV, on the second half of the 17th century, had the largest country, whole of Europe. A little bit similar, like in the modern history, in the 20th century, the position of Russia. So large country, I remember more than 400,000 square kilometers on the time. It's a very large country, integrated to Burgundy and Normandy and everything, which was a satellite province for a long time. It's a huge, not possible to occupy. Tried a lot of times by Emperor of Holy Roman Empire. The largest army, 500,000 soldiers, served under the flag of Louis XIV. And the question was, Paris on the time was a core area or not? Not. Why? Because, first, too large for economic integration, this political frame. It's named in the French history the gigantism. It's a giant political unit, not able to the technical level of the communication and the transport integrate. First. The second one, the products which exported from France, which is the quantity of the exported from France, decided in Amsterdam. Not inside France, not in Paris or Lyon or any other core area of French economy, but Amsterdam. Why? Because in the 17th century, whole of Europe, the fleet of international trade fleet calculated, reckoned 12,000 large ship and 6,000 sailed under Dutch flag. Therefore, a Dutch trader in Amsterdam decided which exported and which products imported to France. Look at, for example, Hungary. You are living in Hungary. Very easy to finding the answer. Hungary is a core area or peripheral area, semi-peripheral area. Why? Because the condition of Hungarian economy, the crucial decision made in Berlin, in Shanghai, in New York and London, not in Budapest. For the criteria of semi-peripheral status and condition, that the crucial question didn't take inside of the country or inside of the region. Good. Look at the last question, the last concept, Europe. If we try to imagine what means Europe, the first time appeared the term of Europe in a Greek myth. A Greek myth. This is the story of the abduction of Europe by Zeus, the main god of the Greek mythology. And Europe was a Phoenician princess. Phoenician, you know, this is a nation who lived in the eastern part of the Mediterranean Sea, founded a very famous cities, Sidon, Byblos, and the Phoenician invented the money. The money. It's a great nation of the antiquity. And Europe, a Phoenician princess, vogued on the seaside, somewhere in the Near East. And it's a very pretty woman, therefore appeared the main god of Greek mythology, Zeus. Zeus was, you know, the Harry Potter. You know this story. Harry Potter adapted a lot of ideas from antiquity and the Bible and different places. Okay, it was able to transform to animal, and he transformed to white bull. White bull. Somebody work with cattle and other animals? No, nobody. It's a very dangerous animal. Its intellectual capacity is very moderate, but very strong and very wide animal. For example, I spent my childhood in a small village and worked together with a lot of animals, but afraid only one animal, the bull. It's dangerous. It's very dangerous. And walking a white bull, which is a dangerous animal, but it was a very special white bull because it was able to speak. And finally, tried communication with Europe and asked her, sit up to back and run. And started a very romantic, famous story. Okay, this is the first abduction of Europe. Up here. Why so? Which is the meaning? Which is the meaning? There is a new nation, a new folk, Greek, in the Mediterranean Sea, and would like to gathering everything, stealing, abduction, not important. There are a lot of similar story in the ambitious nation. Abduction of the women. Everything is our, because we are strong, we are aggressive, and we earn everything. It's connected to this intellectual and mythological context. The second one, Europe, not only one person in the Greek mythology, but a geographical concept, geographical term. Europe, imagined by Greek geographer and philosopher, with among three continents. The first one, Europe, eastern boundary, a Don River of Europe. And until the 18th century, each European, Middle Ages, early modern time, imagined that the eastern boundary of Europe, not the Ural Mountain, but Don River. Why so interesting? Because recently, the Russian-Ukrainian war located the old eastern boundary of Europe, a Greek boundary. It's possible you remember the name of Mariupol. Mariupol, which founded by Greek colonizer. Mariupol. And very interesting, there is a historical rupture line which sometimes reactivated. Okay, Europe, Asia, of course, other great continent, and other boundary, western boundary of Europe, Pillar of Hercule. Pillar of Hercule. Somebody know which is the recent name of Pillar of Hercule? Western boundary. Gibraltar. It's our original name, it's possible the Muslim student know. Gebel al-Tariq. Stone of Tariq. He was a military leader in the 7th century when occupied Iberian Peninsula by the troops of Prophet. Pillar of Hercule. And Libya, which know the northern part of Africa, this was a Libya. The Greek geographer knew only 3 continents, Libya, like Africa, Asia, and Europe. Okay, look at this picture about the military line between Russia and Ukraine. It is located on the line of Greek geographers, Eastern European boundary. Okay, but at the beginning, in the middle of the 18th century, Peter the Great and his follower mapped eastern part of western part of Russia and the eastern part of Europe. Organizer of mapping was a Swedish officer and geographer, Philip Johannes Stalenberg, who mapped. It was a typical each country of Europe in the 18th century when appeared the mass army and the large organized infantry-based army. Very necessary mapping of landscape of the countries and the mapping of the street and the highways and everything which necessary, which had military values. And Philip Johann von Stalenberg proposed that's not so good boundary Adon River because it's very unstable, change the bed time by time. Therefore, like a geographer, much more study a mountain, a Ural mountain. He proposed, and to the beginning of at the turn of 18th and the 19th century, step by step, the geographical departments and international organization coded that this is the right eastern boundary, which located 1,100 kilometers farther to east. Therefore, the framework of Europe changed. Why so important? Because in the Middle Ages, when thinking about Europe, the meaning, the geographical meaning is basically different. The meaning of Eastern, Central, and Western Europe. Anyway, the Western not, but the Central and Eastern differ. So, okay, my cat. This is the first item we closed, and it's a relax after the gym. Look at the next slide series. We define the crucial concept. Look at the first element of the case study. Okay, we are over. The next problem we can solve: when started the European history? When started the European history? The first possible birth date of Europe, when the Hans, you know the Hans, it's very famous, Xiu Nu, named in the Chinese history, moved from the Great Wall to Europe and crossed on the Volga River. And location, the greatest king of Hans, located very near to Szeged. This was the core area of Han Empire, and pushed the German troops to the direction of Western Roman Empire and started the age of migration. And the Western Roman Empire collapsed in consequence of the Han invasion. Attila, named the greatest king. This was the first starting date. First birthday, possible birthday. Other possible birthday, division of empire. Majority of age of empire, it was an integrated empire, directed from Rome. But last successful emperor of Roman Empire, the great Theodosius the Great, divided two parts Roman Empire because too large. If, for example, recently in management, it's a basic knowledge is that, for example, the enterprise is too large. Improve the efficiency with dividing smaller part. Theodosius applied these knowledges even in the late antiquity, dividing two parts. And it was a very successful decision. Why? Because the Eastern Roman Empire survived 1,000 years a collapse and the fail of Western Roman Empire. This is the other possible date of birthday of European civilization. The third possible birthday of European civilization, Sacco di Roma, as mentioned in Italian. Sack of Rome. A king, a Visigoth king, Alaric I, occupied Rome and sacked the whole of the city. Why so important? Somebody watched the famous, 10 years ago, it was a famous movie of The Gladiator. Who watched The Gladiator? You remember, majority, half at least the audience. You remember the story, no people march into the capital with arms. Only the praetorians, the bodyguards of the emperor. Nobody. And who lived in the capital, who lived in the Rome, imagine we are on the safe place. Why? Because the last time when occupied Rome, it's happened 387 before Christ. 8th century passed and no enemy stepped into the city. Therefore, it was an illusion. We are harmless. It was the illusion of the harmlessness. And this illusion destroyed by Alaric I. And this is the official date. If you take a baccalaureate and ask what happened, when happened, collapse of Roman Empire, this was the deposition of Romulus Augustulus. You know the bibliography, you know the date of birth of this young emperor. He was only 15 years old. No real power on the hand of Romulus Augustulus. And up here, he lived in Ravenna, northern part of Italian peninsula, and approaching to the court of Romulus Augustulus, one German general, his name is Odoacer. It's very interesting reading a history, because, like for example, there is a night, it's dark, and there is a lamp, and some people appear. And we know the name of Odoacer, who marched into Ravenna and asked from Romulus Augustulus the gadgets of emperor. For example, the sword, I remember, and the crown, and I don't know, the gadgets of the symbols of the power of emperor. It's very surprising on this cruel area that didn't kill Romulus Augustus, only asked the gadgets. And after, when received the gadgets, walk into the harbor of Ravenna and take to the hand of Captain of East Byzantine ship, Byzantine commercial ships with the message: in Western Europe, we never would like to elect a new emperor. Elected a lot of different emperors, but without the gadget of the empire. This is the official, in the historical guidebook, this is the official and the captain of the vessel sailed to the Constantinople. This was a good man, and passed to the emperor of Eastern Roman Empire, to the Byzantine Empire, and the Byzantine Empire take to the how the name is jewelry. It is jewelry to the how the name is. It's a little bit late to the court of the jewelry, the gadget of Western Roman Empire, and never officially never elected a new emperor. This is the official date, and the last date, official last date, possible last date of the birth and the collapse of Western Roman Empire, the Hijrah. You know this story. When Muhammad and followers of him moved from Mecca to Medina. And very interesting, my guess, in Europe, in Hungary, there is one settlement who named Medina, like in Arabian Peninsula. Somebody know in which county located Medina, the Hungarian Medina? Nobody? Transdanubian area. And Tolna County. Tolna County, it's a southern part. It's very interesting because I have a friend, a geographer friend, working in the Debrecen University, and traveled to United States after 9/11. And on the airport, realized came from Medina. And had a check 3 hours and very deeply. Then realized it's not Arabian Peninsula, but in Hungary. But very interesting, the same name. Okay, but turn back to the story. Muhammad moved from Mecca to Medina. This is the starting date of Muslim calendar. Why so important? Because this is a Muslim story. Because the troops of Prophet was very successful. And for 1 century, even 1 century, drove the boundary of the Muslim world. To the end of 17th century, arrived under the wall of Constantinople, occupied whole of the Near East, whole of the northern part of Africa, occupied Iberian Peninsula. You remember the story of Gebel al-Tariq. It's a military leader of troops came from the northern Africa and passed on the Pillar of Hercule, named after him, and occupy Sicily, occupy Corse, and occupy the southern, eastern, and the western part of the Mediterranean Sea. Which is the most important consequence? The candle, you know which is the candle? Candle for the baby. The candle of the culture, until the appearance of the Muslim world, was the Mediterranean Sea. But in consequence of success of Muslim culture, pushed northward a European culture, a Christendom, as I name in contemporaries, and integrated new area. For example, a German-Polish plain area, far from the Roman Empire, integrated Scandinavia, the Vikings and the Norsemen, integrated whole of the British Isles, not only the large, not only the Brittany, but Irish Island, integrated north part. Therefore, Europe, a new Europe, not the Greek, a new Europe, medieval Europe, became a continental civilization. Rome and the Greek civilization was a sea-borne civilization. But the new civilization, continental civilization, had to integrate and had to invent the new technology for the new ecosystem. Because the sea-borne ecosystem, it was very successful. But for example, elementary devices, which used in the Roman and the Greek and the Phoenician civilization, usable in the dark forests of the Europe. Because if you try to imagine Europe on the dark Middle Ages, a huge forest with small area which hewed down the forest around cities and the villages. But majority, the landscape, dominated element of the landscape, a huge forest. But very interesting, hew down the majority of forest to the 14th century. Because we are a modern people and we imagine that everything happened in the modern time. It's not true. The decrease, the shrink of forest area unfolded in the Middle Ages. And the size of the forest was the same on the 14th century like recently, in the 21st century. Therefore, very important to realize that the history is not a linear process. Up, down, up, down, up, down. Look at, for example, population of Rome, 1.5 million. After the collapse of Western Roman Empire, down. And the same size, same human integration, European civilization able produce only in the 19th century. Somebody visited in Rome. A lot of buildings survived. Why? Because the population of Rome, on the time of Renaissance, 50,000, shrank. Therefore, it's continued the same dimension, reusing bricks and the stones, but shrank the population. Therefore, grazed ships on the ruins of Roman Empire. Therefore, survived. Europe was able to produce the same technological, economical performance which happened in the 12th century on the 19th century. Between the 12th and the 19th century, up, down, up, down, up, down. But it's a very long story. The history is not linear, and very difficult to forecast. Okay. And you can see this is the frame of Muslim world from Iberian Peninsula until the boundary of China. Good. Look at the first, not the last, but the first integrated theory of before the world economic system, which invented by French historian, British historian Arnold Toynbee. Somebody listened about challenge and answer theory. Challenge and answer. It's very usable, very easy to understand and very useful theory. Why? Because Arnold Toynbee wrote a human history from the human evolution until the 20th century. Therefore, for this book series, necessary make simple theory which usable in the early phase of human evolution until now. In the Middle Ages, China, Europe, India, everywhere. And this theory named challenge and answer, it's usable in psychology, personal psychology, because you can, for example, you may have, with you may happen situation, there is a challenge. For example, exam is a challenge. And invasion of barbarians, look at the movie of Gladiator, this is a challenge. In the challenge situation, basically, it's a simplification, basically may select from 3 types of answer. The first, solving the problem with traditional tools. Look at the Gladiator, which is the traditional solution of the problem in the Roman Empire. Mobilizing the legions, and pushing back barbarians. And look at, for example, a life of university student, which is the traditional solution technology of exam learning. Participate on the lecture and learning. This is the traditional. But sometimes the traditional solving technology fade. activate the second answer. Innovation. Innovation. In the innovation, it's a crucial the role of creative minorities. Look at, for example, the Latin language survived. It's a dead language, but somehow it survived until recently. On the frame of Roman Catholic Church. On the Vatican State, recently the official language is Latin. The Latin legal system survived in the frame of Roman Catholic Church. On the time, a Christian were the creative minorities who saved the values of Roman Empire. Look at the, for example, exam situation using AI, ask a question. But very important to be very, very careful with the AI, because AI, this is a mirror. It's a mirror. If somebody make a good question, receive good answer. And for example, on my computer, there is a file with my good questions. And if somebody making a bad question, receive bad answer, even from AI. Or there is from other intellectual devices, for example, have survived innovation, for example, smartphone, and probably you know. It's an innovation. And the third answer is a collapse. It's a fail. Try to first, try to second. Okay, look at from this perspective, formation of European civilization. First problem which had to solve by European living in the continental frame, new agriculture, because the technology which function on the Mediterranean area, in the continental area, useless. Why? Because basically different the vegetation, basically different the climate, and basically different the soil. Basically different the soil. And the first and the crucial innovation, heavy plow for tillage. Because on the continent, on the Mediterranean Sea, used on the scratching plow. For drought power, enough 2 slaves or 1 cattle. But in continental Europe, on the brown forest soil, it's very compact, very hard, necessary at least 6 to 10 cattle and horses. It's possible, in last week I spoke about, which is the peculiarity of to be European. I spoke about, I remember. New agriculture pushed to the direction of European peasant collaborate one to other. Why? Because not enough the animal of one family for drought power for plow. Necessary collaborate 2, 3, 4, 5 family for one drought animals power. Therefore, in the peasant society, which form 90% of European society, socialized very deeply for collaboration, and making compromise, which is the peculiarity of the compromise. Nobody win and nobody lose. It's very important. And these kind of socialization started in the 10th century with heavy plow and everyday devices. Rotation system a little bit later, a new form of harnessing. The basic problem, a terra rossa, which are typical soil types of the Mediterranean Sea, it's very, very easy for the tillage, for a very light structure. And the brown forest soil is very hard, very difficult to plow. And heavy plow, historical presentation and one kind of the modern form, it's asymmetrical construction. And look at one short movie about how function in the practice a heavy plow.
With 90% of the population on the land, any development in agricultural technology would affect everyone. And in the 7th century, the agricultural inventions came one after the other to fundamentally change people's lives. The first was a new kind of plough. You see, up till then, the plough in general use had been little more than a digging stick pulled by oxen. It came from the Mediterranean, where it's still in use today in the Middle East, and it was good enough for the job of turning over the light soil in that area. But up here in Northern Europe, it got you nowhere. Soil is too thick. So, when around
It's a digging stick.
700 AD, this came along, it made a very big impression. It had wheels, it had a knife to cut through the sod, and the ploughshare had a curved board attached to it. This new plough would cut through anything. Look.
The clothes of Professor is
You see what the knife
contemporary.
does? It cuts open the sod and makes it easier for the ploughshare that follows. And then the curved board throws the soil up and away to one side, leaving a clean furrow. With a team of, say, 8 oxen in front of this, you could farm the thick, rich land up here that no earlier plough could ever have done. It was bloody hard work, but it could be done. So by about 900 AD, this plough was opening up the north really fast, clearing the forests, producing more food, and in consequence, the population was rising. Woo! Now, in those days, this would have had a team of oxen up front, not a horse. The plough and the oxen were very expensive. Few peasant farmers could afford the whole deal. So they formed cooperatives, each man bringing what he could. And as they began to work close together, they began to live close together in big groups, villages. That's why villages happen.
Okay, and very interesting the story of formation heavy plow. Heavy plow invented the difference separately from one to other. But two core area had when the evolution of heavy plow, it's the most developed. The first one are Slavic area. This is the Slavic home country between Baltic Sea and Carpathian Basin. It's a slowland area, and according to etymological background, the Slavic came back to the slow. And in this area developed the heavy plow. And very interesting that on that time German principalities would like to continue the Roman lifestyle, which is the basic criteria of Roman lifestyle, Slavic slaves who are working on the field. And therefore organized military campaign for Slavic people who weren't Christian, and stolen large community and deported to France, to England even, and Scandinavian area. And not by chance, for example, came from the Slavic language, a Slavic name, the slave, terms of the slave, or French, for example, which is the name of the slave. Esclave. Esclave came from the Slavic because proliferated the Slavic slave whole of the Western Europe, and moved with them not only the language but even the technology. Other source area of heavy plow, a Khazar Empire. Somebody listened about the Khazar Empire? Khazar Empire? Khazar Empire, basically a Turkish empire. The core area of Hungarian tribes lived in the frame of the Khazar Empire in the 19th century. But very interesting, the religion of the Khazar Empire. Somebody know which was the official religion? Judaism. Exceptional. Because the Judaism not a missionary religion. But we continue the story in the following week with the problem of Kazakh innovation. Thanks a lot for your attention. I ask your patience. I read the list of participants.